Thank you very much, Roger Rapson there. It is Monday Nights, Monday Matters, just about 20 minutes past 9. Up next, we're talking politics. We've got the the deputy political editor of the Daily Telegraph on the phone. We're going to talk about her new book, which covers MPs as they leave Parliament. Up next. The general election of 2015 will be remembered just as much for what didn't happen as what did. The months of speculation about whether the Lib Dems or SNP could forge a new government with Ed Miliband were dashed in the early hours of the 8th of May as David Cameron won the first Conservative majority since 1997. There were some surprise exits from the House of Commons this year. Scalps included that of Ed Balls, Vince Cable and Nigel Farage's UKIP party, which didn't even get close to the 5 seats they were expecting. As well as the unexpected exits, more than 80 MPs dropped out willingly at this year's general election, including some big names such as Dame Tessa Jowell, Jack Straw and William Hague. Political journalist Rosa spoke to many MPs who stood down and has written a book which provides a frank and exclusive insight into their time in Parliament. It's called Standing Down, Interviews with Retiring MPs, and Rosa joins me on the phone this evening. Hi, Rosa.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. As I said in my introduction there were some big names who bowed out this year. And what I was struck most with, I suppose, was the conversation that you have with the former Liberal Democrat Sarah Tether, who said she was depressed and exhausted by politics. Was that a common theme?
She was a very interesting one. I don't think she was necessarily a common theme. Actually, what I found out was that each MP seemed to have their own journey through the Commons, their own different career. And Sarah's was quite a particular one. She came in at a very young age at a by-election. She was very both ambitious but also quite idealistic and had things she wanted to do. And by the time she ended her career, still only 40, I think she did feel rather run down by it. She was a Lib Dem who joined the coalition, remember? She was a minister. And I think she found that hard. I think she found governing and having to compromise on some of those ideals really difficult and ultimately too much for her. And she decided to quit at a very young age.
They also talk about the Commons in terms of a club. Usually it's a boys' club. Did she talk about that and her experiences with dealing with all the other male MPs? Because it's still quite a male-dominated environment.
Yeah, Sarah did talk about that. Actually, all the women I interviewed had the same experience. The earlier they had gone into Parliament, I think the tougher they found it. There was a Labour MP, Dame Joan Ruddock, who talked about being in the Commons chamber and actually during a debate having Tory MPs saying sexist things to her, talking about, it was a debate about the strip searching of women in Northern Ireland, and one MP said to her, "Oh, I'd like to strip search you." I mean, it's astonishing to think of now. I don't think that would quite happen these days. But yes, I think in that era when the number of women in the Commons was numbered in the tens or even less, it was quite a hard place to be for them, and they were very brave. The women who came in from 1997, if you remember in that Labour landslide of 97, over 100 women came in. Mm-hmm. That began to change things, and I think today's women probably find it a much easier place, but certainly at the start it was tough for them.
And some of the people who left this year kind of left under a cloud. There was likes of your Tim Yale's, Malcolm Rifkind was pretty much forced out, as I suppose was Tim Yale, and that was partially down to media interest in their stories. Did you find them willing to talk to you, and had they accepted, do you think, their own part in their own downfall?
It was surprising how many of the MPs I spoke to had some kind of scandal in their time in the Commons. Most of them had kind of overcome it and had moved on, but all of them who had that experience found it the toughest of their time in Parliament. So, for example, Tessa Jow had that experience where her husband was caught up in a bribery scandal with the Italian President Berlusconi. Tim Yo, as you said, had been found out during the height of Back to Basics to have a love child. There was an MP called Mike Weatherly in Hove who only served one term, and during his time his ex-wife was found out to be working as a prostitute. Another MP, Greg Barker, came out as gay during his time, and it was revealed that he'd had a lover perhaps while he was still married to his wife. And all of the MPs found that their toughest time. Oh, David Blunkett, of course, he also had a love child. They all said it was absolutely horrendous, but it didn't seem actually to be the reason that they were leaving. I mean, Tim Yo, for example, served many years after he was forced out of the cabinet, and there were other reasons, I think, for most of them standing down other than scandal. But yes, I think they found that quite a bruising thing to go through. One thing I did get from all the MPs was their concern about the future, that some of them were interested in getting well-paying jobs, because some of them felt, as I think Mr. Rifkin sort of notoriously said, that they had felt that they hadn't been paid that well during their time as MPs, and that they deserved more. One very classic example of that was Stephen Dorrell, who could have had, I think, perhaps a bigger career than he did. He was a cabinet minister, but he didn't serve for that long, and he's definitely bowed out basically because he wanted to go and make some money rather than serving his constituents anymore. I think he thought he'd done his time, and he wanted to live out the rest of his years in comfort.
And I suppose hand in hand with being an MP, as we sort of discussed, is the amount of scrutiny that is placed on individuals. Going back to like sort of the Tessa Jowells and the other women that you spoke to, especially the ones with families, did they express any concern for the new wave of women coming in about how difficult they might find it, and did they offer any advice?
Men and women I spoke to, all of them. So this definitely wasn't just a female thing. We're all worried about the impact on families of being an MP. The hours, as you know, are long. They've changed them over the years, but they're still difficult. Some of them thought in a way it might even be harder, because the old system was that you would sort of be for the first, you'd come down on a Monday and you'd work very late and then you'd leave on a Thursday. And these days they tend to have more morning sessions to hopefully accommodate people's families. But every MP I spoke to said it was rough on their families. They didn't see their children enough. The children found the scrutiny of being an MP's offspring really difficult. The MP I spoke of earlier, Mike Weatherby, he said that when his daughter organised a local music festival, and all the attention she got in the local paper was MP's daughter organises festival, and she actually said to him, "Get out of my life, Dad," and that was one of the reasons he was standing down, because he just found that too much. Another MP, David Heath, a Liberal Democrat, said that there are no upsides to being the child of an MP, that it's really tough on them. And I asked every MP what their advice would be to the new intake, and they all said, look after your family, take care of your family, because this isn't might be fun for you, but it's not necessarily a good thing for them. And another factor that I found speaking to these MPs were a number of them had divorced, and they had directly attributed that to their experience of, often not long after becoming an MP, that the time spent away from home and those long distances were just too much. So that's quite a concern, I think, for the new intake.
In writing the book and in speaking to all these MPs who were just about to stand down, was there anything that surprised you? I mean, you've been a political journalist for a very long time now. I know you were over in America. But was there anything that surprised you in the writing and the conversations that you had?
I was very impressed by them. I did know quite a few of them already, but I think sitting down with them as I did for a long time and looking back over their careers with them, I did come away with a strong sense of their public service and the good that they had tried to do. Perhaps I shouldn't have been surprised. Perhaps that is a cynical old journalist in me. But yes, that was something I found interesting. There were one or two other snippets I picked up. A lot of them mentioned the fact that we now have 5-year fixed-term parliaments as a reason that they didn't want to stay, because they didn't feel they could commit to 5 years. So I wonder if when that law was introduced, whether that was considered, whether it was known that it would sort of encourage people to retire. That's a good thing, that's a bad thing. I was impressed by, and perhaps surprised by, the all-consuming nature of the job, by how much it absorbed them, both sort of mentally as much as even in a physical sense of having to be in the place. And that was, I suppose, a surprise.
And would you ever want to consider being an MP? Did it put you off?
I don't know. It's a big responsibility. That's the thing again. They all talked a lot about their constituents, which as political journalists, we never really pay attention to, because I guess it's not as sexy as the sort of machinations of power. But for them, it was even the ones who'd had quite big, important careers talked about their constituents and the responsibility they felt. You have to be quite a big person to take that on. I don't know if I've got it in me.
And it sounds like some of them will miss the job and will actually miss being an MP.
Yeah, most of them were quite regretful, particularly ones who'd had long careers. It is a gilded life as well. They're looked after. They have the Commons facilities are wonderful. They have great support staff, and I think some of them were going to find it a little hard readjusting to civilian life.
Yeah, and also because when they leave as well, they get quite a substantial pay packet as well. Just for the first 3 months, they get supported. So it's not all bad for them.
No, they get a very generous golden goodbye. That used to be really big. They're scaling it back, but it's still not bad. Though I don't think we should feel too sorry for them. But yes, I think more, not so much the pay that they'll miss as the facilities of the Commons, where if you ever go into the House of Commons and you see an MP walking by, the doors are open for them. People ask if they're okay. There's always someone. Most of them have someone at their elbow providing them tea and coffee, and it's just quite a nice way of life. Just on a daily basis, their needs are looked after so that they can concentrate on the larger things, I suppose. They don't have to worry about the smaller things. And having to buy their own plane tickets, that kind of thing, I think they might find quite hard.
Yes, and just finally, there's no shortage of people wanting to become MPs.
I know, well, particularly since the expenses scandal, we all heard, no one's going to want to become an MP if they haven't got enough pay and allowances, and it's going to be a disaster for democracy. But more and more people apply every time there's a general election, and as you say, we've got a whole new intake just come in now who are very excited to be there. So I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Rosa Prince has written a book about her experiences with these MPs that she met standing down. It's called Standing Down, Interviews with Retiring MPs. Rosa, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Thank you so much.
100% local radio for Sittingbourne. 106.9 SFM. Don't forget, if you want to keep up to date on everything Sittingbourne, check out the 106.9 SFM website at www.sfmradio.com.